radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. All right. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. And today's Monday, November 15th, 2021. 318 days into the new year, only 47 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Coffee in the throats. A total undisclosed location, but it is beautiful. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and the UnX Network. Ray Hobbs. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking? My voice is good. Considering, how's everybody doing? All right. This week is another first-time guests week here on Fade to Black. Very excited for everyone that we have lined up. Tonight we have a very special guest. Paul H. Smith joins us for the first time to discuss his career as a remote viewer for Stargate. That's right. That's tonight. I cannot wait for this conversation to start tonight. Tomorrow night, actor, comedian Steve Berg. Steve Berg joins us for the first time to talk about his ad in the classifieds that reads, "Actor seeks UFO." We'll be talking about that tomorrow night. Wednesday night, Sarah Breskman Cosme is with us just before I am talking about. Oh man, I'm just gonna show you guys this. This is hilarious. Right before, let me show you my call log. This is my call log. Okay, at 6:59 p.m. 3 minutes ago, she's calling. She just landed. And she's with us on Wednesday night. I am so excited about that. And then Thursday night is the world premiere of The Observers. And we have a huge special event put together. And I cannot wait for that. What an amazing week we've got coming up here on Fade to Black. And I just, when I say just, I pulled in to the bunker just a couple of hours ago. And wow, what a weekend. I just want to say this. Now, we have Paul Smith on with us here at the bottom of the hour. We'll be talking more about things. But what an amazing weekend. And to see all of the Fadernauts there and just the the attendees for the conference and the energy level and how happy everybody was and what a great time we had. So, and then coming off of that, I was just in the most amazing mood, and I was racing from Nevada to get here to the bunker because I couldn't wait for the show tonight and everything that we did over the weekend. Now, I need to be very clear to everybody. We don't have a Fader night this week, and normally, on Fader night, and including like a night like tonight, full recap, pictures, images, this. I didn't have the opportunity to do any of that. I sent myself the images that I took over the weekend and sent it to myself via drop. 420 megabytes. And the file didn't clear through. So there's that part. Okay, so the images are still sitting here on my phone. Brad Harris sent me another, 50, 75 images, and those are sitting there. I haven't had a chance to go through those. He's posting up on Twitter now. So listen, over the week, I will get this stuff out there. Okay, I'll get it out on social media and things. And I'll see how much of it I can get out. And I don't know how we're going to do a full recap and go through the images like we normally do. But, wow. Now, but I did post right before showtime. I just had to do that. I had to. We get there, everybody's gathering on Thursday night. And Carrie from Palm Springs is there Thursday night. And so we get together, and I found out, the bottom line is this. We're walking the casino floor. We kind of goof around and walked up to which, she's asking, what to do with the slot machines and things. Okay. So I've got a newbie with me with slot machines, which is always fun, right? Okay. But we're walking through, we're in the casino. I don't know how many minutes we were there, but it was minutes. We zigzagged through and randomly just walked up to a slot machine and popped in whatever. Didn't even really look. And I said, okay, just hit the max bet button. So she does that, and she does it again, whatever. We're at the slot machine for just a couple of, and bam, she hits this thing for $720. Right? And it was so much fun because, first off, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out. She's got a double. She's got a triple. She's got the blue 7. And the thing rings past $100, and it rings past $200. There's a lady sitting next to us, and it goes past $300. It's not slowing down. I'm like, what the, And the lady next to us looks at the machine. I can't repeat what she said, but it was really cool. Yeah, $720. It was awesome. So I did post that up, and that was the start of the weekend. It was incredible. Look at Carrie's face. She's in shock. You can see right behind her. You can see it. There's a double, a blue 7, and a triple. And you can see right there on that slot machine, man, $720 just paid out. And it was very, very cool. So Lisa Reed came out. Lisa Frith came out. Lisa's friend Stacy. Lucinda, Nurse Nancy, Brad Harris, of course, Eric Awakening, man, he was there a week before, and just a long list of Fadernauts, and it was so awesome to go out with everybody each night and hang out. So more on that in just a bit, because what happened last night was absolutely extraordinary, and I will talk about that in just a bit. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. JChurchRadio. And follow me right there on Twitter. The sandbox is hashtag F2B right there on Twitter. And we don't bite, so just come over and hang out with us. Let's get into the breaking news. This is pretty nuts. This story broke today. I almost didn't believe it at first. I thought it was satire. It's crazy. The United States today confirmed that a Russian anti-satellite missile tested today and was responsible for causing a debris field in space that forced astronauts aboard the International Space Station to temporarily seek shelter. The State Department spokesman Ned Price told reporters that Russia had recklessly conducted a destructive satellite test of a direct ascent anti-satellite missile against one of Russia's own satellites. Earlier today, U.S. Space Command warned of a debris-generating event that happened in space and said that it was coordinating with other countries to help ensure the safety of their equipment in orbit. The debris field forced astronauts and cosmonauts aboard the station to seek shelter in their Crew Dragon and Soyuz spacecraft. How nuts is that? In case they had to abandon ship. That is absolutely nuts. Seriously. Well, just announced a mysterious sun temple lost for over 4,500 years has been found buried in the Egyptian desert. Archaeologists unearthed the ancient remains in Abu Ghorab, 10 miles south of Cairo, in what is being called as the biggest discovery in decades. It is one of 6 sun temples believed to have been constructed, of which only 2 have ever been found. They were built while the pharaohs of the 5th dynasty were still alive, all done to grant them the status of God. Absolutely incredible. All right, also announced today, starting to go down. Sandy Hook families suing InfoWars founder Alex Jones have won a case against him after a judge ruled against Jones, who had failed to comply with the discovery process. Jones and entities owned by him were found liable by default today in a defamation case against him. He was being sued by families of Sandy Hook victims in both Texas and Connecticut courts over his past claims that the 2012 mass shooting was staged. He has since acknowledged that the shooting was real. The case will now proceed to a hearing and damages. Absolutely incredible. A status conference is scheduled for this Wednesday. Wow. It's going to be a lot of money. It's going to be some do-re-mi right there. Moving on. Let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today, ABBA's Annie Fried Langstad. Today is 76. Nickelback's Chad Kroeger. All right, I'm going to say it again. Nickelback's Chad Kroeger. Oh, man. Today is 47. Yeah, I actually did it. I couldn't help myself. I couldn't. Our dead guy's birthday today is Tony Thompson. 1954 to 2003, died at the age of 48. Tony was one of the great drummers of a generation, playing it at first with Chic on the hits like Le Freak, Good Times. That's Tony Thompson. Sister Sledge, right? We Are Family. That's Tony Thompson. I'm Coming Out with Diana Ross. That's Tony Thompson. After that, it was Tony playing on the drums on Madonna's first album and all of those hits, like a Virgin. That's Tony Thompson. Material Girl. And Tony then went on to work with Rod Stewart, Power Station, and David Bowie. 3 days after his 49th birthday, Tony died on November 12, 2003 in Los Angeles within a month of being diagnosed with kidney cancer. And 2 months after the death of his Power Station bandmate and lead singer, Robert Palmer, who just died of a heart attack. Incredible. Happy birthday, Tony Thompson. On this day in history, 1965, at the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah, a 28-year-old Craig Breedlove sets the land speed record at 600.6 miles an hour in his car, the Spirit of America. Incredible. Fader fact. In 1992, 6 visitors to a dinosaur exhibition at the Memphis Zoo demanded their money back. They wanted a refund after discovering the exhibition did not contain living dinosaurs. That is your Fader fact. Tonight, it is the beginning of another first-time guests week here on Fade to Black. Tonight, it's Paul H. Smith joining us, obviously for the first time, to discuss his career as a remote viewer for Stargate. Tomorrow night, actor Steve Berg. I just spent morning, noon, and night the last 4 nights with Steve Berg. He's absolutely hilarious, totally cool, and totally dedicated to the UFO. So we're going to be discussing all of that tomorrow night. Wednesday night, Sarah Breskman Cosme joins us for the first time. And Thursday night, she's going to help us prepare for Contact. Thursday night is the world premiere of The Observers. If you want to check out the trailer and pre-order the film, the links are below in the description box. We've got it up throughout social media, and I will hit everybody with more links tomorrow. But that's it. Thursday night, November 18th, the world premiere of The Observers. All right. Let me hit this River Moon coffee. rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Now, what a great weekend. It was perfect. I just got back from Laughlin, Nevada. And that all just happened a couple of hours ago. It is 7:19 p.m. Here in Los Angeles. And it was just amazing. And the excitement of the weekend, kicking off Thursday night, it was just so cool. Had so much fun. And we went in and sat down to dinner with a large group of friends, and of course Stacy with an I, Stacy Herrick. Thank you, Stacy. Worked so hard this weekend and for the last year to put this conference together with Paula Harris. And so Thursday night, we got together with Stacy and all of the MCs and the talent for the show to sit down for dinner. And we got to walk in. We sit down for dinner. We're like, she just busted a slot right there for $720. Walking to dinner. That's how you do it, man. That's how you do it. Anyway, so, but what a great dinner we had with everybody. And you could just tell the vibe and what was going on. It was a total prelude to the weekend. It was an incredible weekend. But dovetailing or bookending that start on Thursday was last night. Whew. I said earlier that I've got hundreds of images and I've got video that I have to go through, and I will, and I'll start to get things up. But some of the things that I'm about to talk about right now, a few things have been posted up on social media. I wanted to hold it all back, and including the video. I've got to do a quick edit and get a couple of videos spliced together from a couple different phones. I have everything, and I'll get that up. Okay, so everybody relax. I'll get to it. But last night, after the conference ended, we got a large group of friends together for a sky watch at Grapevine Canyon, okay? And I've heard about Grapevine Canyon over the last couple of years. Things got halted a couple of years ago from this thing called COVID, and things got postponed, and we had planned a sky watch up at Grapevine Canyon and the Petroglyphs site there for a while now. Well, last time I did at least, got to go up there. And so we get this group together, and it was awesome to have, there's group shots up in Twitter. You can see how many people we got up there after the conference. And I was very happy about that. And the Skywatch part of it was great. Okay? It was. One event happened during the Skywatch. I'll get to that in a second. But before that got started, Grapevine Canyon, by the way, it's right there. It's like 6 miles outside of Laughlin. Before your car gets warmed up, you're already there, right in the middle of the desert. And I just couldn't believe how close it was. It was 6 miles, 6 minutes, literally. So we get there and we pull in, and there's a parking area below, and we probably had 10 cars lined up. I thought, okay, this is great. So I get out. There's nobody there. And, Melinda Leslie is standing there. Hello, Melinda. And, by the way, Melinda can party. I'm just going to say that right now. So anyway, I said, where is everybody? She goes, they're up at the Petroglyphs. And we looked, I've never been there, I don't know. And I'm with Michael Mazzola. I hope Michael's listening right now. And we look up the hill, and I could see the flashlight. I could see, and we take off and we head up the hill. And without getting into crazy details right now, ultimately, this is what happened. We get up, hike up, get up, and everybody's, I just look around. Everybody is there. Everybody, all my friends and stuff. And it's so cool to experience this. We were there for a sky watch. We ended up becoming archaeologists, and we start looking at these images. And the petroglyphs are everywhere in this canyon. Ginormous, beautiful, and it's just like everywhere. I had a flashlight, of course. Whoa. So after doing all of that, shooting video and trying to figure out, because there was a story being told here, and you could tell something was happening in the story. There was a story in these petroglyphs. And I'm no expert. This is the first time I've ever seen petroglyphs. This is it. I've been waiting for this. We've all seen petroglyphs. We've all seen images over the years. But this is the first time that I've ever been able to see things for myself for the first time. And it was a total life-changing experience. To see something that is probably thousands of years old, right? That has survived millennia of weather and things. It's just life-changing. So we go through all, and as we come down off, a couple of Fate or Not stragglers head to the left, and they're up, and they find another set. So we go up and look, and that's when we saw this. I can't explain it. It looks like an astronaut to me, helmeted dude, and we see him, and next to him was this DNA. It's DNA. It is a double helix, big. It's like 3 foot long. Next to the astronaut guy is this. It's DNA. And then above that, as everybody's heading up, they're looking at more petroglyphs. I find to the left a cave entrance. We couldn't get to that, but we could see it. Too dangerous. And this is at night. But to the right of that is another cave. They find that. And they're crawling. Jimmy, you got to come up. I was like, oh, man, I'm not going into a cave in the dark. I'm not going into a cave for any reason. But not in the dark, for sure. And they talk me in. I go up and I kind of take a peek in, and I go for it. I have to get down and crawl and go through this entrance and then stand up upright inside of this cave. And I'm looking around, and we've got video. There's petroglyphs on all the walls. It's a cave. And my mind has never been so blown. Crazy. And the cave walls are going up. There's this crevice. It's like 30 feet high. And there were drawings up at the top of this. And I've got it on video. When you see it with the flashlight, you see how high up. Obviously, somebody's shimming up somehow and doing this and laying down this incredible artwork. And so I climb out of the cave with everybody else, and I'm walking down the hill, and I thought to myself, we were all discussing the same thing. There's some kind of story here. It's like creation. There's drawings of sperm. There's this DNA. There's this astronaut guy. There's crazy symbolism all over the place. So we go back and we do a little bit of research, and you can look it up yourself. Look up Spirit Mountain, Nevada, the Grapevine Canyon petroglyphs. And we find out that the Mojave Indians date back to 1100 AD in this area. 1100 AD. But they don't lay claim to these petroglyphs. That the petroglyphs were drawn by their ancestors. Don't know the age of these petroglyphs, but the description of them from anthropologists and archaeologists that have studied these, and it's a National Historic Site, but that it's a creation story. And you read that, I'm like, that's exactly what we don't know, but you can see the symbolism. You can see it. You can feel it. And they were telling us something. And then you read this, that it's a creation story done in 3 chapters. And there it is. It was incredible. And we did that last night for hours, climbing over these rocks and looking at things. And for me, and I know that everybody else there, here we had this amazing weekend and what we did and so much fun. And then we turned around and did that. It was insane. I've got so many pictures. I've got video. I will get everything up over the next couple of days. I have got hundreds of shots. It's incredible. There are hundreds of petroglyphs. There's 70 panels of petroglyphs in this canyon. 70. It's insane. So much fun. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I just got back from the Star Wars USA Laughlin UFO Conference. And my guest tonight is Paul H. Smith, remote viewer of Stargate. We're going to do all of that when I come back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net.
Introducing the Game Changer blend from Rivermoon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all Rivermoon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years, and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
The new KUNXDB, the UNX Network, bringing you the best in paranormal programming in premium high-definition streaming audio and video. Log on to the network at unxnetwork.com and check out the growing lineup of programs, including Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and many more. Sign up for the free UNX newsletter, follow the UNX blog, or pick up the latest edition of the UNX magazine. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So check us out at unxnetwork.com. Tap the show page and the calendar so you never miss your favorite live shows and podcasts. We are your portal for all things paranormal. The X, explaining the unexplained.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. First time guests week. I love it when this happens. Tonight, Paul H. Smith is with us. Tomorrow night, actor, comedian Steve Berg is here. So spend a weekend with him too as well. And then Wednesday night, Sarah Breskman Cosme. It's going to be a great week. And then Thursday night, of course, is the world premiere of our movie on Amazon. And The Observers, and the links for that are down below. But that will be happening on Thursday night. So we will have a world premiere live event with us on Thursday night with Lou Elizondo, Whitley Strieber, Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, William Henry's in Egypt. I don't think we're going to get him. I'm trying to. John Greenwald and Debbie Cobble. And I think I might have the director of the film, Roger Richards, with us, and maybe even the executive producer and another producer, Adrian Youngblood and Leon Kennedy. It's going to be great. So that's going down Thursday night. So we've got an amazing week coming up on Fade to Black. But tonight, Paul H. Smith is joining us for the first time. And tonight, I'm so looking forward to this. We're going to discuss his career as a remote viewer for Stargate. And I also want to do a little bit of conversation diving into what disclosure is to the world right now. And I'm going to get into my reasons for doing that in just a bit. But for 7 years, Paul, Ph.D., Major, U.S. Army, retired now, was a psychic spy in the DoD Stargate remote viewing program, where he worked as an operational remote viewer, a training instructor, unit security officer, and unit historian. A founder, a former president of the non-for-profit International Remote Viewing Association. He is CEO of Remote Viewing Instructional Services, Inc. His book, Reading the Enemy's Mind, which I have, was a Reader's Digest book bonus feature and Editor's Choice selection. He also is the author of The Essential Guide to Remote Viewing and Reading the Enemy's Mind, Inside Stargate, America's Psychic Espionage Program, as well as co-producer of Learn, Dowsing, and Remote Perception Home Study courses. Paul has been interviewed many times by Art Bell and George Norrie over on Coast to Coast, A&E, History Channel, Travel Channel, Discovery, CBS Sunday Morning, and I'm out of breath. It is too long of a CV there, Paul. And I'm just going to jump straight to it and say, welcome to Fade to Black, my friend. How you doing?
Thank you. And count your blessings, because that was the short version.
You know, what I enjoy doing is editing bios back so I can get through it, right, in one breath. But I decided not to do that with you, and I wanted to see how far I could go. So I didn't get to Rob Lowe. I didn't get to you. So welcome, and Paul's channel and website are right there at jimmychurchradio.com. What a crazy weekend.
I have to say, I made crazier because you were there.
Well, you know, okay. Here's the deal. Lots of information, lots of great presentations. You and I did a panel together and all of that stuff. But you and I got to have lunch with Jacques Vallée for 3 days in a row. Mm-hmm. And the conversations that you and Jacques and I had at that table, that should have been videotaped. Right? I mean,
it was awesome. It really was. Yeah.
And see, this is what I enjoyed about those conversations is we when you're in a freedom of thought process over breaking bread, you just let it go, right? And we did. And that was really cool to just get into everybody's head and get opinions on things. That was just, I mean, I learned a lot. Did you?
Yeah, I learned, as I always learn, I learned how much I don't know.
Right.
You know?
You know what was really great is Jacques has you and I are loud. You and I are boisterous. You and I converse that way. Jacques is the opposite. A little bit reserved, very pragmatic, very black and white, and soft-spoken. So we had to just tone it down and listen to his words. And he chooses them so carefully, and they're so deliberate. And that was just awesome because it just allowed me to concentrate.
Well, and the great thing about Jacques is here we are all pontificating and giving our different ideas and theories and all that stuff. And then we realize, oh, here's Jacques Vallée. We ought to give him a chance to talk, And so we kind of turn to him. And he proceeds to just eviscerate everything that we were pontificating about. The guy's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant and very kind, but very, very, very smart and wise.
One of the things that he did over and over again to the both of us and others at the table too as well, but he chops you off at the knees with kindness, but he'll say when he goes, no, actually, no, I disagree. It's like, wait, okay, all right, okay, am I going to argue? Right? You just kind of got to go with the flow. I remember, I want to move on to you, but there was a moment in the middle of our conversation. He got up from the table and walked away, and I turned to you and I said, well, I just chased Jacques Vallée. He's out. And you remember that. And he walks. No, that's not what he did. He went over and got a cup of coffee and came back. Remember, and sat down and goes, "Okay, let's go."
Yeah, he wanted to recharge so that he could take us all on at once. Yeah. No, and we should make it clear that Jacques is very careful not to be, not to attack anybody, and he was very careful to explain things as he understood them.
Right.
And as we're listening to him, we realize he's got some insights and he's got some perspectives that probably haven't occurred to anybody else at the table.
No, and that's right. And you just keep your ears open and learn something. But here's the deal, Paul. He's an alien. You know this, right?
Well, do you remember in my talk, I accused you of being an alien.
And that was the spirit of the weekend. We had so much fun. There was so much information flying around, and for everybody that was an attendee there, the energy level was high. Listening to people cheer as things were stated, and not cheer, right? Also, when it's controversial and they don't, and that's the spirit of knowledge and learning. It was good. Pushing a lot of boundaries this weekend. Extraordinary. And for you, when you get together and have these alternative mindsets, right? Everybody thinks on their own and thinks for themselves. The topic of the weekend that just kept coming up was disclosure. That just seemed like private conversations, their presentations, conversations at dinner were all about disclosure. And first, what did you make of that? And did it change maybe some of your worldview on what disclosure may be for everybody else?
I don't know if it changed my worldview. I mean, disclosures, this whole topic has been around for decades, really. And it's kind of evolved as to where it started, where it's headed, and developed various aspects. And disclosure isn't all just one thing when you get right down to it. As are most topics in this field, that none of them are all just one thing. There are different perspectives, different viewpoints and things. I think what's been really interesting in terms of disclosure is what has actually been disclosed in just the last few years. I mean, so I was careful to make it clear that I am not a UFO, UAP, ET expert. My expertise is kind of obtained from osmosis because of the people I know in the field, which is a large number of the really prominent folks. And so I have kind of picked all that up. There's some other things too, some of which I can talk about, some of which I can't. But I've become more and more interested, involved in the UFO field as I go along. And so I'm seeing a lot of these things come up, some of which I already knew about, but now becoming disclosed, if you want to use that term, But it's unfolding in a way that I think the people who've been lobbying for disclosure probably hadn't thought it would happen in this way, right? The government is developed a bit of humility here, right? And it's saying, okay, we do have some of this stuff. We don't want to know what it is. We're going to kind of turn some of this loose so that it's kind of like where you have a problem, you want to distribute it over a wide population of problem solvers, because in aggregate, they may actually be able to solve the problem that you can't solve right there in your lab. Hal Puthoff, who I'm really good friends with, that's kind of the path he's taken. He's got this, very sophisticated laboratory facility in Austin, Texas. In fact, they built some instrumentation that's more sensitive than anything that was available at the time they built it. And yet, I'm talking to him one day, and I said, well, what about, like 0 point and all that? So where are you at in that? And he said, what we've done is we've outsourced a lot of this. We have stated the problem, we've shown this roadblock we've run into, and we have essentially broadcast it around to all the other people who are smart thinkers in this to see if we can multitask and all together ultimately come up with a solution. And at least to some extent, that's where the government's going. Now, when people say government, it's not a monolithic thing, and who knows all the little niches and all the little nooks and crannies that things are going on in.
Right.
But ultimately, I think disclosure is starting, and it's unfolding in a way that isn't how it was expected to occur.
Now, if we go back, and I'm going to discuss your childhood, but if we go back, 30, 40, 50 years, and the way that certain things were perceived, and I'm talking about physics merging into entanglement, which is such a big word today, but it's always been around, since Einstein with special and general. But that discussion has always been there amongst physicists. It's evolved so much and so quickly that your research and what you did back with Stargate and the remote viewing program, all of this stuff is connected. If the principles behind remote viewing and special and general relativity, right, and ET and propulsion systems and what is going on in the universe, once one of these dominoes falls, right, don't they all fall?
Well, I think it's a little too complicated to think that they'll all fall. Ultimately, they may. It's probably more like unraveling a sweater, right? You pull on one thread,
right,
and you keep pulling on thread, but it's a long time before the whole sweater is unraveled, right? So, and there are obviously connections, but there are huge gaps in our physics understanding. And until those gaps get filled, I don't think that whole sweater is going to come apart, at least in the next decade, shall we say, or however long we want to put on it. But the fun part is unraveling the sweater. And as we learn new stuff all the time, gradually we put these pieces together, and ultimately we'll get the whole picture. But it's kind of fun teasing those little threads apart to see what we can learn.
Were you able to, discussing your childhood, were you able to remote view like Christmas presents at the age of 5?
No. Well, no, let me say this differently. Yes, but I didn't know I could.
That's
right?
my point. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Take us through that. Did you have an open-minded, family that allowed you to have freedom of thought?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm one of 8. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. When you have parents who have 8 kids, there's absolutely no illusion of any capability of controlling what they're doing or what they're thinking, right? My family, actually, my mom and my dad both encouraged us to look into things, encouraged us to discover new things. I was interested in ESP as a kid, and it came from reading science fiction and watching some of the TV shows and old movies, the old black and white movies and stuff, and so I was interested in ESP, and they didn't care. They were fine with that. So yeah, I had a very encouraging environment as I was growing up.
Were they New Agers?
No, not at all. No. They were Republicans. They were both teachers. My dad worked for the Park Service in the summers to help feed 8 kids, right?
Right.
And they were fairly apolitical. They weren't really much concerned about politics. They were much more concerned with making ends meet and involved in their social circles. And they were very kind people. They're very helpful people. So they spent a lot of time helping others. And that's where their focus was. They didn't really care much about what was happening on the larger political stage.
Now, I want to ask you a little bit about your background because you've got a BA from Brigham Young. Mm-hmm. Were you there because of a religious background?
Yeah, pretty much. I was born into the Mormon Church. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Right.
But trying to say that every time is a real mouthful. So right. I go for the nickname Mormon normally when I talk about it.
And then backing up, your Ph.D. is from the University of Texas at Austin. I know that you lived there for a long time. Where did your family call home?
Southern Nevada, a little town called Boulder City.
Oh,
about an hour and a half from where we had that conference. Yep.
Okay, so that's how did you end up in Texas?
I was in Texas several times, but mostly because of assignments. I ended up living in Texas. We moved there after I retired from the Army, and the reason was, foolishly, the University of Texas decided to accept me into their Ph.D. program. So, there are some other advantages. One is that my wife's parents at the time were living in San Antonio. Mm-hmm. And although that wasn't a deciding factor, it was really awesome that Hal Puthoff lived there in Austin and had his lab there. In fact, I used him. I hired him, actually. I brought my remote viewing training company to Austin. In fact, my philosophy professors that freaked them out when they found out how I was putting myself through school by teaching people to be psychic. They said, "What? You can't do that." But Hal was there, and I was teaching my classes. And so for each of my basic courses, I would take my class over to his laboratory, and then he would give them a lecture telling them how remote viewing got started, telling them about the science behind it, telling them about kind of the early days of it, the personalities, the projects they did. Is really awesome. I still do that, but we have to do it by Zoom, unfortunately, because he's not. I live in Utah now, and he's still in Austin. So
now let's go back again. Let's back up. As you started to, after high school and looking at your life and career and college and higher education, did you have that interest in remote viewing, parapsychology, ESP, which was already in full steam, from the 70s or 1970 forward?
Yeah. So when I got recruited for the program in the summer of 1983, I had never put the words remote and viewing together.
Right.
I'd never heard of that. Now, before that, though, remember I mentioned I was interested in ESP. I've read a lot of science fiction, Andre Norton's books about telepathic cats, and Zena Henderson, her stories about this alien race that looked just like humans but were psychic and had their little enclave here on Earth, and various others, other science fiction writers. And I was fascinated by the idea and wanted to believe that ESP was real. But unfortunately, in junior high, one of my colleagues decided she was going to do an ESP project. And the idea was they had the Zener cards. Those are the cards with the star and the wavy lines and all that stuff, made famous in Ghostbusters, right? And we tried with Zener cards to transmit our thoughts or perceive what somebody else was thinking, whatever. It's kind of a telepathy experiment. Total failure. I was psychic as a brick, at least according to that. And so I became a mild skeptic about this. I thought, that stuff's really cool, really interesting, but I have my doubts that it's really, really real. And so I went on from that point being doubtful about this faculty, that it even existed.
And so what came next?
Well, I went on a mission for the Mormon Church, went to Switzerland, which was awesome. Came back, got married, and in short order joined the Army. I wanted to learn Arabic, and Brigham Young University didn't teach it at the time. They do now, but they didn't back then. My then wife said, well, if you join the Army, they'll not only teach you Arabic, but they'll pay you to do it. Oh, okay. I didn't really want to, but I joined the Army. One of the best things I ever did, joining the Army. It was awesome, right? And then I went through various things and ended up becoming an officer and got sent to Fort Meade to work as a Mideast analyst in a human intelligence unit. And while I was there, I got to meet Skip Atwater, who was the guy who founded the Army program. He was my next door neighbor. We shared a wall. Across the street from Tom McNair, who was a remote viewer in training at the time, but I had no idea what they did. And it was very weird because I couldn't find out. I'd ask him these questions, and I knew what everybody else on Fort Meade did, pretty much. If I asked him, I could figure it out real easy. I couldn't figure these guys out.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm an Army brat. So I have to ask you this. You will get this. Some in the audience won't. But when you go to officer training school and you're looking at the pamphlet, right? Is there a parapsychology or anything down there that alludes to this? You're laughing. You know exactly what I'm suggesting here.
Absolutely none. No. And it was so tightly controlled. I mean, it was, people say above top secret. There's really no such thing, but it was in a caveat, a side compartment that only about 150 people in the world knew that it existed, right? In the entire military and government, about 150 people on this list that were allowed to know about it. So I had no way of knowing about it. I was a conventional intelligence officer, tactical and strategic intelligence and signals intelligence. That was those were my specialties. And so I get to Fort Meade, and these guys are doing something that I couldn't figure out. I mean, I knew what everybody did. They did signals intelligence, human intelligence, imagery intelligence, or what did I leave out? I left something out. One of these things. And when I'm talking to them, I'm saying, well, I know you can't tell me what exactly you're doing, but you can tell me which one of these intelligence disciplines you do. And they said, none of them.
None of them. And see, this is what's crazy. Everybody at Fort Meade is a spook. Yep. That's everybody's gig. Trying to figure out what they do. Well, if they're doing their job, you're not going to find out. So you're not going to find out who they're doing it to. Right. But you will almost always know what kind of a job it is. Right. All spook, though. All spook, top to bottom. Yeah. Did you have to pull it out of Skip, or was this a conversation that actually happened?
There was no pulling out of them. The conversation actually happened. And I just said, well, surely you do one of the ints. And they said, no. I said, well, what do you do? We can't tell you. And then I said, this is great. I said, because I thought if I could figure out what kind of stuff they did, I could ultimately deduce it. Right? I said, well, do you do a lot of traveling? Right? And Tom looks at me and he says, no, well,
kind of.
Sort of.
Yeah, right.
Sort
okay.
of.
Let's stop right there. I need to take a break. And that is just, I just can't imagine. That must have been so cool. Okay. We will continue where we are leaving off. It's going to be a great conversation tonight. You need to buckle up, kids. Our guest tonight, Paul H. Smith. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black, remote viewer at Stargate. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, VX.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30days free That's coupon code 30 days free on forbiddenknowledge.tv today.
Because you never got that pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer, Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roasted to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We are also Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, tonight, Paul H. Smith. This is going to be great. And when it comes to... well, Paul, you're supposed to remote view that. He just held a question up. I'm not going to say what it was to the camera. That was funny. And you know what? I can go back to that joke for the rest of the night too, by the way. And you know what's interesting to me is, and especially when it comes to remote viewing, how do you handle questions from people that want to insist that they're experts in quantum physics or physics when they're not a physicist, and they don't understand remote viewing, but they will act like they do because they've read a book?
I try to follow the principle that Jacques Vallée follows. I try to be kind but skeptical, I try to, and it kind of depends. Sometimes it doesn't matter. It's perfectly fine if they believe what they want to believe. They're not going to have an impact on anybody else, right? If it's in a situation that matters, then usually I present a few questions to kind of get them to think about what they're saying, and maybe to see that maybe there's things they don't know or whatever. Mostly I'm more interested in what people listening in are learning from it, rather than convincing the person that I'm talking to ultimately. So
right.
I try and educate the observers, even probably more than the person that's there in front of me.
Now, I have been told from many remote viewers, all of them, the same thing over and over again. Everybody has the ability. You just have to be taught. That sounds extreme to me. It's too easy. But is that basically true?
Well, it is basically true. But the catch isn't having the ability to remote view. The catch is allowing yourself to learn how to use that ability. It's a lot like any other complex human skill. I like to use the example of playing the piano. Well, they're not exactly congruent, but they're similar in as far as an analogy is concerned. So anybody that's got all their fingers and has got a reasonable ability to recognize musical sounds can learn to play the piano. It depends on three things: their willingness to be taught, their willingness to practice, and their ability to understand what it is they're being taught. Okay?
Right.
And I guess that's part of the first one when you get right down to it. And if they have that, then generally speaking, anybody can learn to play the piano to a level where people don't mind listening to them. They can accompany a soloist or whatever, right? They may not become concert pianists. That's partly maybe because of willingness to invest the kind of energy and time that it takes, but they can become adequate piano players. I mean, nearly anybody can learn to drive a car up to a point, right? Nearly anybody can learn how to shoot guns accurately if they're willing to learn the principles and practice, right? So remote viewing is like that as well. You get some people who are able to learn it, and other people who, for whatever reason, maybe they've learned some things the wrong way and they just don't want to unlearn those things, right? Or they may just not really comprehend what it is you're trying to get them to do. Or oftentimes it's actually anxiety, right? They're kind of afraid of learning how to do it. They want to learn it, but they're a little bit afraid of doing it. That's one reason why some people don't learn to swim. Everybody can learn to swim, but some people don't, because they're just a little bit afraid of it, right? So there's a lot of reasons, but ultimately what gets in the way is the ability to learn it, not the ability to do it.
Now, those statements come over years of experience, but when you first sat down with Skip and start digesting this, how did he discuss what this was? How does he introduce it? Because what you just said to me right now, I could land on my feet pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it wasn't that way back then.
Well, it's interesting. I learned two different ways. The one was the way Skip taught me, and then the other way was the way that Ingo Swann taught me, right?
Right.
So the way Skip taught me was he put you in a setting. We read the book Mind Reach, which gives you a little bit of an idea about how it works. He put us in a setting, said, okay, just cast your mind out there and see what happens. And then if you're going to get anything, you had to remote view. So it was kind of almost like being thrown in the deep end of the pool and told, if you reach the side, you'll know how to swim, right? So that experiment was what we call an outbounder, where a couple of my colleagues went off to another location, which I was not aware where they went. And then they became my beacon. The idea was that I would try and find them out there, wherever they were, psychically find them. And then when I found them, I'd also find the target where they were. And the goal was to describe their surroundings. Okay. And so Skip says, okay, here you go, and we're going to do it. And okay, I'm not quite sure what it is I'm doing. He said, don't worry about it. And then, we went through it, and he'd ask me a few questions like, now let me remember. I think it was Tom and Joe McMoneagle that went on that Outbounder. It's been a while, and I wrote it in my book. I have to read my book to remind myself what it was, right? But he said, find them and describe where they are, and that was essentially the instructions I got.
And
I didn't find them.
You didn't find them.
Well, okay, I'll have to tell you the story. So I'll make it short. The target was this massive water tower. It's one of those things that look like a big spider, the central thing, and then all of these pipes coming down around the edges, just this huge, almost spherical thing, kind of a squash sphere, probably 40, 50 feet tall, equally round. It's huge. I shouldn't have missed it, right? What I described instead was this small room with a thing at one end that had glass on it that was transparent, and little windows with curtains, and these little spindly little tables, kind of like tea tables and chairs, and the off-white walls, kind of a matte texture. And I'm describing all this, and finally Skip says, okay, and they come back, and your feedback is you get in the car with them, and they brought along donuts for us to munch on, right? And get in the car with them, and they take you back to the target. And I get there, and I'm walking around this water tower. I'm saying, I didn't get any of this stuff. I'm thinking, oh no, I'm going to get fired before I even start. I'm done. I'm never going to be a remote viewer, right? And I'm walking around, total miss. Then we're driving back to the office, and all of a sudden I had this pull off to the right. I see this small building, and I look over there, and I say, I want to stop there. And Skip looks at me and says, essentially this principle, if you don't get the target, it doesn't matter at all what you remote view instead. I say, okay, I still want to stop there. We pull over there, we walk in. I see at one end this counter with a transparent front. I see these little spindly tea tables. I see curtains with windows with curtains, and a kind of an off yellow matte surface. It was a donut shop. It's where they bought the damn donuts.
Now, okay, this is really cool. Was it what you saw though? I mean, did you recognize it?
Absolutely, I recognized it. Absolutely recognized it.
So what goes through your mind now?
I'm thinking it really does work, but they're still going to fire me.
Right.
Yeah, they screwed up the protocol because the way the protocol is, you're supposed to go straight to the target and straight back. You're not supposed to stop anywhere. But on the way back, they said, oh, let's get some donuts. And so they stopped at the donut shop. That's where I picked them up. That's where I picked them up.
You brought up Ingo. You just mentioned McMoneagle. So you've got like the all-star squad, out of the gate. Did you realize who was around you? Did you know who Ingo was? Did you know Joseph McMoneagle?
Well, I knew Joe. He was just one of my colleagues. He was a friend. I mean, at that point, and everybody respected, in the unit, everybody respected Joe because he literally was the best remote viewer we had at the time.
Right.
At the time. And frankly, he was the only one left from the original set of folks because everybody else had been transferred out.
Right.
Or died. We actually, unfortunately, had one guy named Hartley Trent, who was an awesome guy who had died of cancer. In fact, I got his desk, which was a little sobering, as you can imagine.
Sure.
So we knew Joe was good. We didn't realize what kind of a legend he would become in the future. Of course, we didn't expect anything to be known in public about this in the future. As far as we knew, it was going to be classified forever.
Right. And now take me through. I'm just fascinated with this. The Stargate program and as an institution. Did that form while you were there, or were protocols already in place? And you go in and there's a Stargate instruction manual and things.
Well, it evolved as time went on, and it wasn't even known as Stargate at that time.
That's my question. Yes.
Yeah. So what happened was, first of all, there's a rule in the government. If you have a classified program, it has to have an unclassified nickname so that you can talk about it without revealing classified stuff. And every 5 years, well, you have to change it under two conditions: either the sponsorship or the command structure of the organization changes, or every 5 years you have to change the name. Either way, you got to change the name according to whatever that criteria is. And the reason is this serves as a counterintelligence function. If you change the unclassified name of a classified program every 5 years or more frequently, it throws off the adversaries who are trying to get information about it, right? Because then they don't know you're talking about the same program again for a while, right?
Right.
So it started off being when it was only being done at Stanford Research Institute, later on SRI International. They changed the name on that too. It was called SCAN8, which was short for scanning by coordinates, right? Then when the Army started it, it became known as, the very first iteration was Gondola Wish, and then it became Grill Flame, and then it became Center Lane, which is what it was when I joined, and then it became Sunstreak when we moved it to DIA, to the Defense Intelligence Agency, and it finally was named Stargate in 1990, after that 5-year period as being Sunstreak. And so when the CIA was assigned this program and decided to close it down, that's an interesting story right there.
Right.
The whole thing just became known as Stargate because that was the final name under which it was known. But it wasn't really called Stargate until 15, 20 years after it was started. So
now, are you still under any classified elements with this, or are we just free to discuss whatever?
Well, there's still a few things that are classified, but not about the program itself or remote viewing. It's more other sources and means that are intelligence collection sources and means that were involved in the program. Now, the CIA declassified massive archives of this program. Interestingly, you get pretty much all the sessions that were both the operational and the practice sessions that are in those archives, but the CIA carefully got rid of what the targets were, what the feedback was. So you know what the sessions are, you don't know what they were targeted against in many cases. Now, it wasn't a totally thorough job. I pretty much know what I'd say probably the majority of targets were, because we've been able to decipher that from stuff they didn't remember to take out and so on, right? But it's pretty much, at least as long as you stick the remote viewing elements, non-classified these days.
Okay, that is great. Now I know my boundaries, which is none. All right.
I'll make sure to enforce the boundaries.
So let's go back to 1983. Were you asked to join, or did you ask to join?
No. I since I didn't know what they were doing, there's no way I was going to try and join it. If you're in the Army, you're smart enough to know if you don't know what something is, don't mess with it, right? So, yeah, I didn't know what they did, and I was busy doing my own assignment, and it was in my my general field of expertise, the Middle East, right? They came to my door one day and said, Paul, we think you might be good at what we do. And I said, well, what do you do? And they said, we can't tell you. I said, well, then why would I want to sign on? And they said, we're going to give you some tests. And if you score where we think you will, then we will read you on, and you'll have an opportunity to either accept or reject volunteering for our organization, right? Okay, what the heck? It was an adventure. So I did the tests, and they were mostly standard psychology tests, Myers-Briggs type inventory, MMPI, various psychology tests. And I scored where they thought I would. The parameters are fairly broad, but still, restricted to some degree. So they said, okay, come on over. I went over, I got read on. Tom was sitting there. Now I have to set the picture for you here. We were a relaxed grooming unit because when we were away from Fort Meade, we weren't supposed to let anybody know we were actually in the Army, right?
So you did wear Hawaiian shirts.
We did when we were TDY once.
Yeah, okay, all right, okay. And Tom is Tom McMonagle.
No, Tom McNair.
Tom McNair, okay.
Yeah, people get confused because of the muck part, right?
Right.
But yeah, Tom McNair, he's tall and thin, and he wore jeans and an open collar shirt, and he had a full beard and long curly hair, right? Now, ironically, his doorstep said Captain Tom McNair, so on post he was acknowledged as being in the military, but he did not look at all like he was in the Army, right? So he's sitting at the table. I'm sitting at the other side of the table. He slides over this sheet that it's a non-disclosure thing, a read-on indoctrination statement, we call it, but it was essentially non-disclosure. And I was already cleared up to top secret with various compartments in addition, including nuclear surety and special sources and all kinds of stuff, right? So I have these clearances, but this was even more draconian than any clearance paper I'd ever signed before. I mean, it was like that Men in Black thing. Tommy Lee Jones is reading Will Smith on, and he says you'll sever all human relationships, you'll have your fingerprints removed, whatever, all this stuff. It was almost that bad, right?
Wow.
So I'm reading this and thinking, whoa, whatever they're doing is really high octane. So I sign it, and Tom says, okay, well, our mission here is to collect intelligence against foreign threats using a parapsychological discipline called remote viewing. We're essentially asking you to volunteer to become a psychic spy. And he said, now you don't have to answer right now. We'll give you 24 hours to think about it, and you can tell your wife these things. And he listed off some things that I could tell her. But as he's saying all this, I'm thinking, I used to really be interested in ESP. I wanted it to be true, and I found out that it didn't work. Now he's telling me there's a line item in the federal budget that's paying people to be trained to be psychics. There is no way I'm going to say no. So as soon as he finished saying you have 24 hours and all that, I said, don't worry, don't even bother with that. Where do I sign?
Yeah, psychic spy, I'm in. I'm all in. Let's go. And that beats the motor pool, right? So.
Oh yes, and I'd had time in the motor pool.
Right. So, okay. So, take me through this. When they say, I'm sure we can discuss most of the stuff out of the open. When foreign adversaries, that's pretty much the world. But at that time, it's the Soviet Union. I would, was that the focus?
I'll tell you, it wasn't the Australians, it wasn't the Brits, it wasn't the French.
Right.
It was the Soviet Union, the Russians, the Iron Curtain countries, the Chinese, okay, and even countries as diverse as Pakistan. And so, not so much that we cared what the Pakistanis were up to, except we were interested in their nuclear program. Mm-hmm. And so there was one or more projects in the archives that were focused on the Pakistani nuclear weapons program, for example. So, and when I say, I said foreign threats. A threat can be someone who isn't necessarily an adversary, but doing something that could cause trouble, right? And so, we did hostages in the Middle East, trying to find Western hostages in the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. We were involved in later on in 89 and 90 and a little bit after that, counter narcotics, the war on drugs, trying to locate contraband and drug smugglers and stuff, and doing it fairly successfully, by the way. Science and technology targets in foreign countries, and hostages in hot spots where there might be hostilities, all those. We did anything that could have been of interest to the intelligence community, any kind of target the intelligence community was interested in. We worked some version of that target at one time or another during the history of the program. Okay, so let's go. I'm assuming training and all of that, that's what the Army is all about. So we're going to move past all of that in the interest of I want to get to the good stuff, and we only have so much time. Okay. How were the targets presented to you or other remote viewers? Are you given points, longitude, latitude? Are you given that? Are you given a subject, or are you given a blank envelope and you don't know what's inside of it? Very early on, they gave us latitude and longitude. They gave us geographical coordinates, okay? But then they switched to what they call encrypted coordinates, which actually were just random numbers, arbitrary numbers that had been intentionally associated with what the target was. So, for example, where you might have, in the early days, you might have, latitude, geographic coordinates for a place in the Soviet Union. Later on, it might be just arbitrary numbers. And I like to use the arbitrary number 8675309 as my example. Well done. I got it. So
okay.
Anyway, so let's say there's a missile facility in Russia. I know one that I actually talked with somebody at the conference about. I don't know if you, well, I won't go into that, but a Soviet ABM radar that was highly classified at the time, we worked that target for an analyst that wanted to see if we could come up with something that they didn't know about it. Okay, and so it might be 86M5309 equals remote view of the Soviet ABM facility at a certain location near Moscow, for example, right? Now, the viewer just gets the 86M5309. They don't get the Soviet ABM facility. That's kept away from them. So they have that number, and that's how you start a session. That's where you begin. You don't know anything else about it, and there's a couple reasons for that. The first reason is the skeptics will claim you're not remote viewing, you're just guessing if you know what the target is, right? Produce information. The really important reason, though, is if you know anything about the target at all, then in fact you do start guessing, but the guessing messes up the signal. Your left brain starts trying to guess what it is. It remembers things it knows about it. It can speculate if it knows it's an ABM facility, roughly what it might look like. And all that is noise. All that gets in the way of actually perceiving the real information that the analyst wants to know. And so you have to keep the viewer blind to keep all of that noise out of the system. The viewer cannot know what the target is. So we use that number instead. It tells them nothing about the target.
Now, as you're okay, so it's one thing to see the outside of a missile facility or the construction of or the element. Okay, I get. But what about taking it a step further? Because I'm going to carry this over into the next segment. Given an office number and a floor inside of the KGB, for instance, to look at a desk, to see notes on a desk, to get specific. Did it ever get to that point?
Yes.
Wow.
And numerous occasions, yes.
Okay. Stop right there. Stop right there. Let's take our break. This is Fade to Black. It's getting good. Paul H. Smith, remote viewing is what we are discussing tonight. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Stay right there.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
The new KUNXDB, the UNX Network, bringing you the best in paranormal programming in premium high-definition streaming audio and video. Log on to the network at unxnetwork.com and check out the growing lineup of programs, including Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and many more. Sign up for the free UNX newsletter, follow the UNX blog, or pick up the latest edition of the UNX magazine. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So check us out at unxnetwork.com. Tap the show page and the calendar so you never miss your favorite live shows and podcasts. We are your portal for all things paranormal. The X, explaining the unexplained.
Fadernauts. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now. Fadernauts, when you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Paul H. Smith is with us. Now, I want to remind everybody what's going on this week. It's first time guest week. Once again, here on Fade to Black. Tonight, Paul H. Smith. Tomorrow night, actor Steve Berg. And Wednesday night, Sarah Breskman. And then Thursday night is our world premiere of The Observers. We've got a huge special multi-stream live stream going out across a bunch of other networks. It's going to be great. That's going down Thursday night. So no Fader night this week. Oh, man. 2 weeks in a row, no Fader night, but we'll get back to open lines next week. Tonight, Paul H. Smith. And now, right before the break, one of the most interesting parts of remote viewing that I've always thought this must be the ultimate goal, right? To peer into like Putin's office, right? And see what he's writing down on a piece of paper, and to peer inside of an office. And you said, yeah, sure, right. I would assume that would be the ultimate thing to be able to do. And you guys were doing just that?
It was done at Fort Meade. In fact, we did it as well. You have to remember there's like 18 years of program here and people coming in and going just for the the Army involvement part of it, right? But it even happened before that. So there's this legendary remote viewer named Pat Price. I think you probably heard his name.
Oh, yes.
Yes, Pat was amazing. In fact, he did some stuff as a remote viewer that I don't think anybody else has duplicated since then. So you almost wish you had his brain pickled and you go in and study it and see what it was he did, right? But one of the things he did was really quite amazing is he got into the code room. Now, let me remember whose embassy it was. The Moscow embassy. Oh, so one thing, he went into the code room of the Moscow embassy of the United States. And the task was, at that time, they thought the Russians were bugging our embassy, but they hadn't found the bugs. And Pat Price was assigned to try and remote view that. And he went inside and he described everything he was perceiving and checking out. And then he described where some of these bugs were located. And so the first order of analysis, they got some tech service guys who were familiar with the code room of the embassy and some of these other facilities where Price was said he had remote viewed. And those guys said, yes, that's exactly the way it's set up. Yes, I can recognize exactly where he was based on what he said. Price had never been there. There were no photos of it. There's no way he could have known that, and except by being psychic. And then they also found the bugs. So that's an example of the kind of thing that we're able to do. Now, I don't know how often it happened, and oftentimes we didn't know we were doing it because the viewer has to be blind to the target, right? But we did get some feedback that we were assigned to actually try and penetrate, like the Politburo, the Kremlin, different parts of the Kremlin, and try and perceive and describe intentions, plans, activities, decision-making, that kind of thing. Now, here's the unfortunate thing about it, is that we did describe lots of things like that, but we, to this day, don't know how accurate we were. Because in order to judge accuracy, you have to be able to go in and ask them, well, on this and this a day, were you doing this and this and this, and get them to say yes. Now, obviously, we couldn't do that. How our information was used, and if it turned out to be correct in predicting things that the Russians would do, we, the viewers, never got to know.
So you hand off your remote viewing results, and then whatever goes on after that, policy, actions, you don't know.
Rarely do we know. Rarely do we ever find out. And that's one of the reasons I told you the Pat Price story, because we did get feedback from that, right? So
now that's another thing. I don't know how much of this is classified, but when policy changes, or actions, I should say, are a result of remote viewing, what's the discussion down the line, up the chain, when somebody says, okay, if we need to react, where did you get, where's this coming from? Is somebody going to say this is from a psychic spy? Or because
in those cases where the sourcing was revealed, in most cases, it did not go well.
Right.
Because the people who got the information, once they heard where it came from, oftentimes just totally discounted it and rejected it. Okay. And that's unfortunate. In one instance, it wasn't in the unit. This was afterwards, during the global war on terror. One of the Army Major Reserve Commands had some people kidnapped by Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Okay. The convoy was taken out, and a couple of the guards were captured. One of them was found, one of them escaped before anything happened to him. The other one, they were sure was dead, but they wanted to get his remains back. So at a certain point, the general officer, the what they call the G3, the operations general officer that ran the day-to-day operations of this major command, contacted me and asked us to try and find these guys, this guy's remains. And so I explained how we needed to do it. He gave me a lieutenant colonel who was a liaison at the Pentagon for the operation. We talked back and forth. I explained how we were going to have to do it. We did it. We produced some results. So we presented the results to them and said, the way it works is you don't just answer the question right off. Sometimes you have to go through several layers of taskings. That's the way all intelligence happens. You get a first cut, and then you need to drill down and get more specifics, right? So we wanted to do it that way. We gave them the first cut. There was a task force on the ground whose assignment it was to find this guy. And they provided this information to the task force and asked for their evaluation and told them where it came from. And the task force refused to use our information because of where it came from. And fortunately, we were not able to get the specifics, but they ultimately located the guy's remains. And the general setting that we described, and all my viewers were double blind on this. They had no idea it had anything to do with the Middle East. They had no idea it had anything to do with the missing soldier. Yet their information was highly consistent with that scenario. A lot of what they produced was accurately described the general setting for this. And I think we could have found him if they had cooperated with us and helped us refine our tasking to get more specific. But they didn't.
Now, you brought up Pat Price. Now, there was a transition that you brought up earlier from the Army to the CIA, and that happened in 1990, 91-ish.
So there's two transitions. One was from the Army to the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency.
Right.
People don't know what that means, but the DIA is kind of the military services version of the CIA. It's strictly military intelligence. Then in 1995, it transitioned from DIA to CIA. Okay, and that was ordered by Congress. Congress wanted DIA to give it up to the CIA, mistakenly thinking the CIA would actually make good use of this. But that isn't what happened.
Well, no, that's what we were told. Is the project still continuing today under another name?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes. Now, let me say sure. I'm sure to the 95 percentile that it is not. I can tell you 100% it's not happening in the military services. They are not doing it. I can guarantee you that. It's about 95% certain that the CIA is not doing it. Okay. Now, there's a somewhat of a chance that NSA is doing it. They had a program at the same time that DIA had one. I have not heard that it was shut down. There's been some whistleblower stuff that came out that suggested they may still be doing a program. So it's possible CIA is doing it. I don't know for a fact, but it's possible they're doing it. And I hope they are.
Now,
I hope they're doing this.
I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on Pat Price, but it's something that needs to be discussed, and so let's do this in an abridged version.
Okay.
He had one of the most remarkable careers. He was a very colorful guy. Mm-hmm. He was an Eddie Van Halen rock star remote viewer. But
That's
he
an
also
interesting way of putting it. Yes.
but he also knew that, didn't he? And so did the CIA.
Yes.
So okay, in your opinion, how did things come to a close for Pat Price?
Well, he died.
Well, we know that part.
So here's the interest. I mean, there is a certain element. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about conspiracy theories, right?
Right.
But there is a certain level of conspiracy that goes on with Pat Price.
Yes.
Now, here's what people say. They say, well, the CIA killed him.
Right.
But that's absolutely false. Because the CIA hired him. He was working with the folks at SRI, Hal Puthoff and those guys, right? He was working with them, and the CIA came along and hired him out from under them because he was so good. So he was working for them at the time. There is absolutely no motivation from them to kill him because he was providing them good data that they couldn't get any other way. Now, I talked to one of his daughters. He's had a lot of kids. I talked to one of his daughters about this, and she said he had personally told her 2 weeks before he died that the CIA, or not the CIA, the KGB was going to get him. And she said, "Oh, really?" You know, she's a little bit worried about it. But what do you do? He said, "The CIA is going to kill me." or at the very least try to kill me. So 2 weeks later, he's in Las Vegas, and he's in his hotel room, and he dies, and there's a call go out for an ambulance. The ambulance comes up, picks him up, takes his body away, but doesn't take it anywhere anybody knows where it is. He's missing. His body is missing for 24 hours, and then mysteriously shows up in the morgue where it wasn't before. So the mystery is what happened to Pat Price's body during those 24 hours. And I have a scenario in my head. Whether it's true or not, I can't tell you, but it makes sense. That the CIA did kill him. I mean, not the CIA, I keep getting that mixed up. The KGB did kill him, okay? And probably with one of those chemicals that they use to assassinate people that mimic a heart attack.
Sure.
But they wanted that to dissipate. They didn't want there to be any link. And so they took his body away somewhere and brought it back after the chemical had dissipated. And then, you know, he was known to have a bad heart. So from that point on, that was the scenario. It was a bad heart. Now, people say, well, Pat Price actually wasn't killed. He disappeared. But both Hal Puthoff and his daughter, the daughter I talked to, saw him in that casket and said it was absolutely Pat Price. He really was dead.
The program itself, so he went to go work for the CIA. The CIA, I'm saying allegedly shut the program down. Well, the reason why I say that, and this is where I'm going with this, it is an economically smart program. You're not paying for assets in the field. You're not risking human lives. You don't. It's totally clandestine. You are truly undercover because you don't have to worry about somebody trying to roam the halls of the Kremlin and getting discovered, or any other country. Plane tickets, housing, all of that stuff that are traceable, right? All of that stuff gets taken out of the play. Right. Why wouldn't that program be a major focus?
So here's the problem. The history of the program in the intelligence community and in the military was a very checkered one. People were out to close the program down. Other people were out to keep it going. And here's the reason. Because there are skeptics in the government as well. People who absolutely refuse to acknowledge that there's any possibility that remote viewing is real. And in fact, what happened at the end was there were skeptics left, and the proponents, the supporters, weren't. They had either died or retired. So the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, when Congress tried to force the CIA to take it, was, what's his name, Robert Deutsch? I keep thinking I need to look that up, and I don't. Anyway, Deutsch, or maybe it's John Deutsch, whatever. He was known. He was a known skeptic. He was famous for kicking people out of his office if they even brought up the subject of remote viewing. If there was anybody who did not want to do the CIA to do remote viewing, it was him, and he was the boss. He was the head of the CIA. And there were others down the food chain who were equally skeptical and equally resistant. The reason it went from DIA to CIA was because the director of the DIA was the same at that time, three-star general who had kicked remote viewing out of the Army. He had come in to replace the current General Burt Stubblebine, which many of you have probably heard of. He'd replaced Stubblebine, and within about 3 weeks of replacing Stubblebine, he had closed down the Army's program. And only DIA, which had more horsepower, saying they wanted to pick it up, that's the only thing that saved it from being gone for good at that point. So when he comes along and takes over DIA about 3 years later, so here's the guy that was biased against remote viewing in the first place, now has inherited it by virtue of taking over DIA. So he was happy to see it go, but the guy who was in charge of the agency that was supposed to pick it up was also a skeptic. And so ultimately, whatever role he played, I don't know what role he played, but whatever role he did or didn't play, the agency itself did not want to pick it up. And so the day they were assigned to take it, June 30th of 1995, the very day that they were handed the keys, they closed the program down.
At its peak, how many remote viewers were in, I almost said platoon, in the platoon?
Well, I'd have to go back and think. I think probably at the most we had 8 at one time. Yeah. And that includes some folks in training and stuff. Usually it was fewer than that. I did add up all the people who were involved in the Army Fort Meade part of it. Mm-hmm. Okay, there was plenty of folks outside of that, but in the Army Fort Meade part of it, if you added up everybody, including secretarial staff, it amounted to about 45 people total.
Well, that's pretty. Did you guys have your own patch?
We should have, but we couldn't wear a uniform, so.
You still get a patch, though.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
You would think.
No, that was the security risk, right?
Right.
Having a patch. Like the all-seeing eye, like my logo or something.
Now, speaking of all-seeing eye, that's where I want to go next. Aside from the military and those applications, there are other versions of remote viewing, and let's touch into that. What about remote viewing the distant past?
Well, that works just as well as remote viewing the present. And that's not a kind of remote viewing, that's an application. So you can use any kind of remote viewing to do that. Now, the one problem with the distant past is it's hard to verify whether you got it right or not.
You can't, right. So if you're going to do the obvious, right, you're going to remote view the crucifixion.
Yeah.
Right. It would. Does that fall under opinion? Right? Is that? And I say that a little cavalierish, but not really.
Yeah. So in principle, and let's go ahead and use the crucifixion as a past target. Okay.
Right.
In principle, you should be able to accurately remote view the crucifixion up to a certain standard. Right. But the problem is you wouldn't be able to confirm whether what you got is right. Now, the thing about remote viewing is it isn't 100% right all the time. There are times when it is absolutely just really knocking out of the ballpark correct. There are other times when it's a mix between accurate stuff and noise. And there are occasions, I'd say roughly 30% of the time, when it just doesn't work and you just get nonsense, right? You think it's right, but you turn out it has no correlation to anything that's true. So you can't guarantee that any given remote viewing attempt is going to be successful. You can expect that it will at least be somewhat successful, but there will be times when it isn't successful at all. So if you can't confirm the results that you produce in some way, ultimately, then you will never know whether you were one of those 30% cases where it just didn't work. So that's the problem. Now, remote viewing the crucifixion, there are things we at least think we know about it. If the Bible's even reasonably accurate, then there are things in there that we know about it. So you could have somebody blindly remote view the crucifixion, and if they produce a narrative that's reasonably similar to the accounts in the Bible, you can expect that they're somewhat accurate in what they're doing. It's even possible they'll produce an accuracy on some of the details that the Bible doesn't have, right? But you won't know that because you can't verify it. So if you're going to do remote viewing in the past, it's really helpful to do something that's more recent that we do have a lot of information about. And they did a trial on this at Fort Meade just to see how accurate results from remote viewing the past could be.
Right.
And they picked the target of Pearl Harbor, the attack on Pearl Harbor. And all of us worked it. I worked it. All of us worked it. We were totally blind, did not know that's what it was. And it was really quite impressive to see the results. Now, the viewers' results were kind of uneven. Some of them were really surprisingly accurate. Some of them had a reasonable amount of data, but got some things wrong, right? And there's some speculation and stuff built into it. So, but overall, it was very successful. In fact, several of the viewers said, wow, this reminds me of the attack on Pearl Harbor. So you know that they were getting there. And so we were fairly confident, generally speaking, that we could do a decent job on at least the not so distant past, but the reasonably historical past.
Well, okay, so you're doing Pearl Harbor, and somebody comes back with the movie Tora, Tora, Tora.
Yeah.
Is that a successful remote view?
Well, it's successful in the sense that it shows that you did get accurate data about the target. Now, that would be actually your left brain trying to come up with something that to compare what you were getting to. So we call that analytical overlay, which is where your left brain jumps in and then gives you the wrong answer or an answer that's partially wrong.
I would say that would be a successful remote view.
If you're just trying to show remote viewing works, absolutely.
Right.
Now, if you're trying to produce accurate information about a certain aspect of it, that wouldn't be successful.
No, if they come back with The Godfather, okay, we're off target.
Then you know you missed it.
You missed it. You missed it. And now, also historically speaking, going back to, and I've seen this done multiple times, there's so much interest into who built the Great Pyramid and how that was done. I've seen this done so many times with all interesting, all fun results, all wonderful to speculate and think about, but all varied. You know, it's all over the map, and everybody can't be right.
You're absolutely correct about that. And that's the problem oftentimes. Usually in those settings, people who remote view the same target that's a controversial target, like building the pyramids, very often they'll be remote viewing front-loaded. And what I mean by front-loaded is they're not blind to the target. They know that they're remote viewing the construction of the pyramids.
Right.
And so at that point, their left brain jumps in, and if they have a pet theory about the pyramids, that's what's going to come in. It's kind of fake remote viewing in a way, right? They think they're remote viewing, they feel like they're remote viewing, but their story is different than somebody else who's doing it the same way and has a different pet theory about the pyramids.
Or a different imagination about the pyramid.
Okay, or a pet hypothesis.
Right. And
so there's an actual operational example of this happening.
Sure.
TW-800 that went down off of Long Island, right? At the time, remote viewing was just kind of emerging out of the secrecy envelope. It was shortly after Ed Dames had been on Art Bell, you know, and everybody's all excited about remote viewing. You had all these people out there who jumped up and took a week-long course and said, I'm a remote viewer now, right? And so on. So you get all these people remote viewing TW-800, and they're front-loaded. And you get one person that says, well, it was a bomb that did it. You get another person that says it was a missile that did it. Another person said it was an accident that did it. And I don't know, there's about 3 or 4 other theories about how, you know, how it went, it was all based on what they thought was remote viewing data. And so, but they all knew they were remote viewing TW-800. And so it's all this noise in there that's just totally warping their results.
Now, I've got to take a break. We're going to continue right here. This is so interesting to me, where we are leaving off right now. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Paul H. Smith, remote viewer for Stargate. And where are we today? We'll discuss all of that next. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, the X.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to GetTheT.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's GetTheT.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon Coffee banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, you can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard, available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
Gold loves chaos, uncertainty, and disarray. History shows us what gold does when people aren't sure about the government, the stock market, their jobs, or their retirement savings. Our national debt is skyrocketing. Gold and other precious metals are a defense measure against inflation and a stock market that might take years to recover. So what can you do right now to protect yourself? Call United Gold Group. We offer gold and other precious metals delivered securely within 72 hours. Are you worried about the stock market? We can also help you set up a real gold or silver IRA or a 401k. Safe and secure. United Gold Group makes gold ownership affordable. Call now and get up to $2,500 in free gold or silver with a qualified IRA. Call 800-753-8534. That's 800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Just got back from Laughlin. Absolutely amazing weekend. And I spent much of it with our guest tonight, Paul H. Smith. And now, Paul, we just discussed, or I should do a little reset. Tonight we're discussing remote viewing. And Paul was a part of the Stargate Project at Fort Meade in the United States Army. I didn't even bring, I'm not going to, the men who stared at goats. We'll save that for another show. But we were just discussing, I'm going to somehow steer this into the men who stared at the past. Can you remote view the future?
Yes, but in a more limited fashion. So I know what your next question is going to be. What do you mean?
You remote viewed that. But
so,
yeah, of course.
So it's interesting that generally speaking, you can remote view the present and the past up to roughly the same amount of accuracy. But if you try and remote view the future, except for a certain modality I'll talk about quickly, your success rate drops off dramatically. And I think the reason is because the future hasn't happened yet, right? And so some things you may get right, but mostly because the future isn't predictable in general terms, you're going to be wrong most of the time. And that shows up. You get all kinds of people making predictions about the future, and a handful of those predictions turn out true, and the vast majority just totally fail. And the reason you think remote viewing or being psychic about the future, fortune telling, whatever, is something that you do with this stuff is because you only hear about the times that work. You don't hear about the times that fail, generally speaking, right? So that's a problem. People want you to be able to remote view the future, want you to be able to predict the future, and that's hard to do. Now, there is one modality that actually works pretty well. It's called associative remote viewing, and it allows you, within a kind of a narrow framework, to be just as accurate about the future as you are about the past or present. And it's useful when you have a limited set of possible outcomes, like, is a stock going to go up or go down? Are the Dallas Cowboys going to win the game, or are their opponents going to win the game? These are discrete sets of outcomes. And using what's called associative remote viewing, you can actually remote view those things up to sometimes 78% accuracy. And it's very useful if you want to make money. People say, well, if you're psychic, why aren't you rich? There are people actually getting rich today using remote viewing within this very specialized application.
And what about yourself? Do you go to a sports book?
I have done that. When online sports betting was legal, I was doing a number of projects with some of my colleagues, and they were successful. Well, I say successful. We did one. You can tell how much of an amateur we were when we were doing it. We got roughly 80% correct on who was going to win games, various sporting events, and we still lost money because we didn't know about point spread. So that hammered us.
Well, and that's a variable. But you guys never bet on the Buffalo Bills, hopefully. Okay, that was a bad joke. That was just a bad joke. Well, what about crime scene investigations?
Mm-hmm. That's doable and has been done if you can get the authorities to cooperate. As you can imagine, it's hard to get a police department to let you in to try and discern what happened in a crime scene and try and solve the problem. Now, there are some who will do it, but they don't let anybody else know they're doing it. One of my colleagues and my former sister-in-law, Angela Thompson-Smith, actually, that was one of the rare cases where it went public. She did help solve a murder case, and her input was directly attributable to having solved that case. And it was admitted in court, and it came out in the newspapers, and the investigating, what was it? I've got this darn brain cramp. What do you call someone? A detective. The investigating detective freely admitted to journalists that the information that Angela had provided actually solved the murder.
And why wouldn't, we all love TV shows like, CSI, mm-hmm. and how great technology is. But going into this other area, if something like this happens, why wouldn't every detective agency at every department want to take advantage of something like this? If they're, everything goes cold, you need another kick in from something else. I would think that they would go into remote viewing.
And a fair number of them are open to the possibility. There's a bunch that aren't, but there's a fair number might be open to the possibility because they'll try anything. But here's the two caveats, right? Even in police departments, you'll have this mix between supporters, people who are willing to give it a try, and skeptics who don't want to have anything to do with it.
Right.
And so depends on who is in a decision-making position, whether you can even do it or not, right? The other problem is, even if they're supportive of it, even if they want to do it, the media climate is such that they can't afford to be found out that they're involved in using any kind of ESP to try and solve their problem, because of the ridicule and mockery that they'll be subjected to in the media. Interestingly, that's one of the problems that we have with the well-structured, the well-supported, the well-organized, skeptical anti-ESP climate out there, is that there's a kind of an ongoing vendetta against anybody, whether they're credible or not. bringing up this idea of ESP, remote viewing, what have you. It gets shot down all the time, and the media is an accomplice to that largely. You'll see when the media does a report on maybe some science that's been produced in a parapsychology lab. A good example is Daryl Bem, who did some really hard, rigorous research into a kind of a presentiment or a precognitive modality, published in mainstream journal. The media was all over that. They would report the results, but then they would get a skeptic in who actually didn't even know what they were talking about, but they just came in to give the skeptical view of it. And then there would be ridicule and mockery develop, sometimes even within the very story reporting. Now, not all of them are like that, but there's enough of it that even a police department is not going to want them to find out that, the public to find out that their taxpayers are paying for an investigation that is using ESP, right? It's what we call the giggle factor in the military. That's one of the reasons the program was classified, because if it became publicly known, then the media would be pointing its finger at the government saying, look at all this money they're wasting. I mean, you get that even now, right?
Well, did that happen, though? We all know about the missile gap, right? Okay. With the Soviet Union, was there an RV gap, right? Were they interested in this?
Interesting thing.
They don't want you guys to run out in front of them with the technology. Are they going to match us with remote viewers?
Well, what people often don't know about the missile gap is there at first wasn't a gap. We thought there was, and so we used the missile gap, the threat that the Russians were ahead of us, to ramp up our missile programs, right? Well, after the fact, they started researching and discovered the Russians weren't ahead of us at all.
Right.
But it served to start an arms race of sorts, right? Well, the same thing happened with ESP. Okay, so the Russians thought we were ahead of them in ESP research. It started partly with a story about using ESP to communicate with the Nautilus, the first atomic submarine.
That's right.
When it was underneath the ice cap, and supposedly somebody telepathically communicated with somebody on the shore. Turns out the story probably wasn't true. Probably didn't even actually happen. But the Russians thought it did. And so they already were researching some of this stuff. That ramped up their interest in it. Well, then the CIA and the DIA are seeing these stories about the Russians ramping up their research into what we would call paranormal subjects. And they were literally spending hundreds of millions of dollars on it. We get yelled at for spending 20 to 25 million over a quarter of a century on ESP. The Russians were spending hundreds of millions of dollars over a decade or two, way more than we ever spent, right? So anyway, they're doing this, and the CIA says, holy cats, look at what they're doing here. We don't know if this is true or not, but we better find out, right? And so we started researching it. And as far as I can tell, and I'm not an expert on this, Ed May, who is one of the scientists, has since gotten in with the former Soviet researchers. But it appears that we actually were quite more advanced than them, at least in the remote viewing part of it, based on us panicking about them being ahead of us.
So, in a weird way, you help bring down the Berlin Wall by forcing them to overspend on a program.
Probably contributed to it. Who can say,
contributed. Right? To that end, when I can only imagine you guys were actually remote viewing each other at the same time, and suddenly frequencies are clashing and picking up on these signals. If you are remote viewing into an office, could somebody in that office feel you? Right? You know what I mean? And know that you are there?
So my standard answer is no. Generally speaking, as near as they could tell, the researchers at SRI and SAIC, generally speaking, there was no indication that anyone at a location that's being remote viewed could tell they were being remote viewed. Now, there are these little anecdotes that suggest every once in a while somebody is aware. Joe McMonagle tells a story that he was remote viewing a target and discovered there was a Chinese female remote viewer also remote viewing the target, and both of them were aware of each other, right?
That's what I'm talking about. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, is that true? I don't know. Remote viewing can involve a fantasy element where you believe something is happening, and it seems to you like it's happening, but in cases where you can get feedback, you find out it wasn't. It was imagination, right? Now, was this imagination with Joe? I don't know. And there's no way to know. So I'm going to say almost certainly you can't be detected at the target, but we don't know everything about it. So possibly there might be occasions when you could be.
Now, let's continue here, but I want to push it a little bit further out into space.
Mm-hmm.
Did you remote view Soviet satellites, Soviet rocket technology, the dark side of the moon?
I was tasked to remote view a Soviet MIRV. If you know what a MIRV is.
Multiple independent reentry vehicle. Whoa!
Good job.
Whoa,
Good job. You know
whoa.
what? If I had a gold star, I'd glue it to your forehead right now.
Whoa! I'm not just guitars, people.
Yeah, exactly. So in other words, we're talking about a multiple warhead missile, right? On reentry. I was tasked to remote view that, not knowing that was what I was doing. And in fact, I successfully did it because we then were able to compare it to what the tasking was, and I got it correct. Now, in fact, on my blog, I actually have that session on my blog with some of my sketches and stuff and comparison feedback photos. It's the remote viewing / remote perception blog. 4 words with a slash in the middle, remote viewing / remote perception. You can go on there and see that session. And I was pretty proud of myself because I was tasked at the time it was re-entering. So it was a moving target even. So that was pretty fun.
And what about going further out into space, like the dark side of the moon, or what is going on there?
Well, I've been there, remote viewing wise.
And?
Well,
I'm not going to let you off the hook.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you now. Oh, okay, all right, I will. So let me give you backstory. I'm not absolutely sure I was accurate on this. It's hard to tell because it's one of those cases where you don't have actual feedback, right? But Ingo Swann, long after I was out of the program, in fact, after I was retired from the Army, he was asked to do a remote viewing project against the dark side of the moon, as we call it. And so he invited me to participate. So there's Ingo and myself and another guy. And we remote viewed the dark side of the moon, and I got some very weird things. I did not know I was on the dark side of the moon. He just gave me some coordinates, did not tell me it was the moon at all, and so I started perceiving this. And one of my reactions was, wow, there's not much air here, right? And I got mountains, and it was very barren and all this stuff. And one of the things I got was an underground cavern in which there was activity going on.
What?
Yes, and activity going on. And I got a perception of this vehicle emerging from this, and I'd say flying, except there wasn't air. And I drew a sketch of it. It was kind of like a manta ray shape, sort of. It's the best I can tell just describing it in words. And I felt like it was. Now you remember this is before the second iteration of Battlestar Galactica. I felt like this thing was both biological and technological, that it was like a fusion of biology and tech. And not only that, but it had a certain self-awareness to it. And not only that it was actually recognizing that I was accessing it, which was really freaky, I have to tell you. Now, that was very briefly summed up what I perceived with this.
What year was this?
I want to say it was around 96. It could have been as late as 99.
Okay.
Yeah. I have all of the files, but I didn't look them up because I didn't realize we were going to be talking about this. So, I'm going on memory. But it was quite remarkable. And I'm not going to tell you it's correct. I don't know if it was correct. But the one sobering thing about all this is that a lot of the data I talked about in there, not this particular vehicle, whatever it was, but describing the underground cavern, sketching the surroundings and all that kind of stuff. Ingo and this other guy also produce similar things independently of me. I got to see the final report, and I saw his response, Ingo's response, the other guy's response, and mine, and a lot of it definitely overlapped. So is that guaranteed? No, there's a thing called telepathic overlay where you can pick up on what other people are doing, right? There's also the possibility I remote viewed their sessions in advance, and that we call that remote viewing our feedback. But generally speaking, that doesn't happen to me because I've been doing it so long. I've got pretty good discipline up, and I normally remote view what I'm supposed to remote view. So I'm inclined to think there may be some legitimacy to this data, but it hasn't been confirmed, so I'm not going to jump on and say this is absolutely true. I don't know if it is.
Well, I'm going to kind of confirm it for you now, and I'll tell you why. Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Roland Emmerich. Now, I know you're going, okay, where are you going with this?
Sounds like a guitar effect.
No, Roland Emmerich directed the film Stargate.
Oh.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, I'm going to take it a step further.
Yeah.
His latest film that is going to be released in February is called Moonfall. And it is about a hollow moon with a manta ray UFO flying out of a crevice on the dark side of the moon, and they attack Earth.
Well, that's kind of spooky.
It's kind of weird, huh?
Yeah.
Now, I'm just saying, it's kind of weird, isn't it? No, it's not a manta ray craft. I added that part. That's my own artistic embellishment. But Roland Emmerich, Stargate. No. This part's Roland Emmerich, Stargate, Roland Emmerich, Moonfall, Hollow Moon, attacking Earth. And that I find that it's a very strange coincidence with what you just described. And then we throw in Stargate. It's kind of weird to me.
Yeah. Interesting.
Now, when you remote view something like this, does that concern you? And what if something like this does develop and there is something more to the moon than we know? What do you do with that information?
Which information? My session?
Your session, yes.
Well, and I offer it to, of course I have to clear it with Ingo's estate, but I'd offer it as additional information for whatever good it is. I mean, it may have some useful information, or maybe it's too general, who knows? But you won't know until you start comparing it with the other material that's available.
Right. And so, do you go back and look at that material when something from the future, well, it would have been the future then, right? But now it's coming to pass. Do you go back and pull those files out to see if there's something else buried in there?
Yeah, I might do that, sure. Depending on if there's an interest from someone who could do something with it.
Now, with that remote view in 96, 99, and what is going on today with ET, does this also maybe, and I'm going to talk about front loading in a second when we come back after the break. By the way, we're doing overtime. You don't have a choice. So
I've been chained to my seat.
What did you remote view that at the beginning of the show?
I had no idea.
This awareness now about ET, where it's never been like this in the past, and certainly remote viewing. Is there an opportunity to maybe look at what is going on with ET in contact and disclosure?
Well, sure. There's always there could always opportunity. Now, my caution is as long as it's done right. At Fort Meade, we had a number of projects where off the books, we weren't supposed to be doing this stuff, but off the books, we were tasked on various ET modalities, various UFO scenarios. Even things like Rendlesham Forest and some of these other iconic kind of UFO events, we were tasked at one time or another. But some of those taskings were well done. They were properly done, properly blinding conditions, properly analyzed after the fact, that kind of thing. Others were kind of loose gun kind of projects where they were done without the proper safeguards and protocols to make sure you're not leading the viewers, you're not introducing artifacts into the process that will just garble things up. So it's kind of uneven, but there's certainly always a possibility. One of the I do a talk sometimes called Remote Viewing and UFOs, right, where I talk about how remote viewing has been used. The first thing is that it's kind of like using an enigma to solve a mystery, right? to misquote Churchill, right? Mm-hmm, so here you have this this mystery, which is, of course, the UFO phenomena. I guess there's plenty of them out there. And then the enigma is remote viewing. We don't know how it works, but it makes sense to use remote viewing because most of our normal means of collecting information have failed against the UFO phenomenon. We still don't know the ground truth with them, despite all of our supposedly advanced technology. Okay, well then it makes sense to use remote viewing because it seems able to get at things that you can't get at with normal collection means, right? So, okay, remote viewing makes sense. The problem is you have to be very careful because it is also much more vulnerable to fantasy and as I call it, mental noise. And if you are not careful, then you may end up believing a false positive or a false negative, right? But it's certainly a tool that used carefully could be valuable.
Well, and you brought up Battlestar Galactica, right? Or if you have another science fiction movie that is part of your brain, right? Something that you think about all the time, that would affect and maybe pollute.
It could. Yeah, it could. Yeah.
Mars, right? Remote viewing Mars and life on Mars. We have what NASA is telling us Perseverance is discovering and past discoveries. But what about that and looking for life? I'm not talking about Zeta Reticuli. Let's just go with Mars. Is that an application?
Sure. So if you're going to collect information about something that you really want a lot of information about, it doesn't hurt to use every means you have as long as you use it credibly, right? And so I think it's very valuable that we're using these conventional science methodologies like rovers and all of that stuff and radar, surface mapping radar and everything to find out what we can about Mars. It's useful to use remote viewing as long as the viewer doesn't know it's Mars, because as soon as they know it's Mars, they'll start putting little green men on it, right? Even if they're not there. So, but you'd have to actually know what it is you want remote viewed. So let's say NASA finds a feature on Mars that they've not been able to get real information about for some reason. You could task the remote viewers on that feature, as long as you do it carefully, and see if they produce useful information, which could in principle later be verified.
Let's take our break right here. We're going to go over time. We have to. Paul H. Smith is our guest. Remote viewing ET. You knew I was going there. We're going to do all of that when we come back after this short break. We just talked ET for 4 days. We might as well continue, Paul.
Why not? Why not?
Let's do this. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Okay.
Listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
Hey, what up, y'all? It's your girl Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30 days free on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JamieChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back. Heading straight into overtime, Paul H. Smith. I knew it was coming because I'm a remote viewer, but and here's the thing as we head into overtime, Paul, is the obvious considerations are remote viewing ET would nearly, well, no, it wouldn't be impossible, but ET would be aware, right? They're more advanced than us, and they've been remote viewing us for 1,000 years. And am I wrong with that assumption? And as you think about that, if we flip-flop this, how do I not front-load a session if I wanted to remote view ET in some capacity? How would I avoid front-loading it without giving it all away?
So how many questions you're going to ask before I get to answer one?
Yeah, right. I know.
So let's start with the first one. Are you wrong in that assumption? Yes. Doesn't mean you're wrong about what you're saying. To assume that they are aware of us remote viewing them, or would be, hypothetically, right?
Right.
To assume that is a mistake. But it is possible they might be able to, right? I'm always really, really worried about assumptions because they condition our minds to conclude something that we may not have enough evidence for. So don't assume that, but allow for the possibility that they may be able to do that, okay? Now, as you know, in my talk at the conference, I talked about aliens manipulating our consciousness.
Right.
Okay. They make people think they see things they don't see. They make people think things that they wouldn't normally think. They make us do lots of things, at least according to the reports we get. Okay?
Right.
Be absolutely sure we don't have ground truth on this, but we have a lot of very persuasive testimony, evidence kind of stuff, right? So they do seem to be able to do that, which would suggest they may have the possibility, they may be able to do these other things, like you're suggesting, recognize when we're trying to do it to them, okay? So we don't know the bottom line there, but we really, really, really need to keep that within the realm of possibility and think about what we are going to do about that if it turns out to be true.
Now, how do I avoid front loading? You know, okay, and this is the deal. If I put something in an envelope, right, whatever it may be, it's going to be very direct and very deliberate. Is there a suggestion at that point about what verbally about what we are doing? Not revealing what's in the envelope, but to avoid remote viewing Chrysler cars as opposed to ET. You know, just heading off in another direction.
Sure. So let me give you just a regular mundane example. And they did this a lot at Fort Meade. So there was somebody had been kidnapped by Hezbollah in the Middle East, in Lebanon, right? And they wanted the viewer to perceive and describe the setting where that person was. But let's say it was Terry Waite, who is widely known. His picture had been in the news a lot, right?
Right.
So let's say it's Terry Waite. You don't want the viewer to know it's Terry Waite because he may have read, he or she, we had a lot of female viewers too, he or she may have read news stories that speculate about where Terry Waite was, and that would end up in their session, right? So what you would do is you put Terry Waite's photo in the envelope that you're talking about, and you'd say, one of the more forward ways of doing it, where say, there's a photo of an individual in this envelope, we want you to describe the location of this individual, okay? So the viewer doesn't have any idea who they are front loaded to the extent they know it's a person. Okay. Beyond that, they don't know. It could be someone anywhere in the world, and they don't know who it is consciously. Their subconscious does recognize it, but that's less problematic. And then hopefully they'll proceed to describe the location of Terry Waite. Okay. Now, that's the mundane example. So let's talk about a UFO-related thing. Let's say we want somebody to remote view Tic Tac, one of the Tic Tacs that the F-18s were following.
You just remote viewed me.
Oh, that's what you're thinking,
Do you want to see my notes? That was what, yes.
Okay. So I'm trying to stay out of your mind because it's not a pretty picture.
That's kind of freaky, actually.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
So what you could do is you could take one of the gun camera photos of the Tic Tac, put it in that envelope, and tell the viewer, okay, I have a photo of an object in this envelope. I want you to describe the object to as great a detail as you can. Then the viewer's blind to the target. They don't know what it is. It could be it could be a harmonica for all they know, a picture of a harmonica, right? But it's not. It's a Tic Tac. And if that viewer is on, they'll start describing it as maybe it's rounded, kind of lozenge shaped, and it's heavy and it's dark and it's got an inside, and inside is, we don't know what. That's what we'd like to find out, right? What's inside of it. But maybe the viewer would be able to access that and describe it for us. So that's one way of getting around that front loading problem.
And have you been tasked with the Tic Tac? The answer is yes. Okay. All right.
Maybe. If I had, I would have signed a non-disclosure, so I couldn't tell you.
So you haven't. Okay, this is getting even better. What do you think is going on here when it comes to our United States Navy and UAPs and this discussion that is obviously out front now? Are we dealing with your remote viewing into this? Are we dealing with something extraterrestrial?
So not based on remote viewing, because I don't remote view things that I'm front loaded on, which I would be in this case, right? I I mean, I think the evidence points to it being extraterrestrial. You know, the government report that Congress mandated and that came out in June is very cautious. It doesn't state for sure it's extraterrestrial. It allows it to be one of the hypotheses, and that's fair. That's really where they need to be. But to me, I think it screams extraterrestrial. I mean, there is, of course, the hypothesis that maybe it's not extraterrestrial, but rather extra-dimensional or extra-temporal, coming back in time or from another dimension or whatever. And, of course, you can't rule any of those out. But they seem less plausible to me than the extraterrestrial thing does, right? So if you look at the thing about this Tic Tac event that's so striking, is that it, and Hal Puthoff talked about this at the 2018 IRVA SSE conference. He said, the striking thing about this is you have multiple sources of corroboration. It was multispectral imagery. You had radar, you had millimeter wave, you had FLIR, infrared, you had electro-optic, you had visual inspection, you had camera footage. I mean, you had, the way we establish the truth of anything is by having a number of corroborating streams of evidence that come together and confirm each other. That's what happened with Tic Tac. That is inescapable, that there was something there, that it was behaving in a weird way. There are skeptics who try to deny that. They are totally wrong, right? This was really, really, really persuasive. And it is some kind of technology. And it just seems to me it's inescapable that it's not inescapable because there are all those two other hypotheses, right? Mm-hmm. But it seems to me that it very strongly points to an extraterrestrial origin and clearly intentionally controlled.
Now, one of the subjects of our conversations over the last few days was entanglement. Mm-hmm. And I'm very intrigued when it comes to remote viewing and the possibility of entanglement being part of, or maybe all of, what is happening here. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the progenitor of remote viewing? What is enabling it?
Well, so entanglement, and I'm sure there's folks listening who don't know what we're talking about, but entanglement is the idea that if you have two subatomic particles very closely associated in their past, they become entangled and then they can exert an influence on each other no matter how far apart they are over distance or time. Well, time's starting to factor into it too, but and it's instantaneous and essentially violates the speed limit of the universe, which is the speed of light, right? So it's a very interesting thing. It's what Einstein called spooky action at a distance, and he didn't like it. It was just too bizarre for his taste. Entanglement is a real thing. It's been both proved experimentally and mathematically. It is a real thing, and it seems to be very essentially throughout the universe. It's an aspect throughout the universe. Now, it's been offered as an explanation for remote viewing. The idea is you're entangled. Remote viewing seems to operate regardless of distance or time. Entanglement, regardless of distance or time. But I don't think it's the answer. Okay. And there's reasons. The first one is that entanglement so far has not been shown to be able to carry information in the way remote viewing is. Okay. That's the first thing. It doesn't seem to explain how the kind of information you get from remote viewing could possibly be transmitted via entanglement. Okay. The other thing is that remote viewing is, to some degree, independent of past and future. It can happen throughout time, better in the past, but still somewhat into the future. Entanglement doesn't demonstrate that. You know, people say, well, you can have an entanglement that works like a microsecond or a picosecond in the future. Okay, fine. That's a picosecond. We're not talking decades. We're not talking centuries, right? And entanglement works at a small scale. It doesn't work at the big scale we're talking about. So it takes some persuasion, but I don't think entanglement answers it. Frankly, I think that there is a non-physical aspect of the universe, and that plays a role in how remote viewing works. But of course, mainstream scientists, that freaks them out because they can't possibly believe that there's anything in the universe that isn't physical. How could that be? You know, but I think it's possible.
Well, okay, so if you can remote view a location or the interior of a building, theoretically, all of it in real time, going back to your water tower example. And I have seen remote viewing done with two different cameras, one on location, one while the session is going on, and watching it in real time, locked with timestamps, and it's very, very interesting. If that is possible, then couldn't you remote view a mind? Could you remote view what somebody is thinking? I'm not talking about ESP or telepathy. Can you remote view inside somebody's head?
Why isn't that telepathy?
Well, I always equate that as communication.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can talk fuzzily about this and say, well, everything's communication, right? That conveys information, but whatever. That notwithstanding, if you're obtaining someone's mental contents, well, this is a big can of worms here, right? Some people will deny that telepathy exists. That is just all non-local perception, right? Non-local. Well, I won't get into that. That's a whole other thing. But it's all non-local perception, remote viewing, telepathy, clairvoyance. All these different things are just branches off of this same underlying faculty. Generally, I kind of accept that. You don't really have telepathy. You just have a different kind of non-local perception. So, but it's really convenient to think in terms of telepathy. But if you're going to remote view, there's nothing there to see, right? If you're trying to remote view in a visual sense, content of somebody's mind, there's nothing there to see. It's just a bunch of gooey blobs of stuff stuck together with filaments of nerves, right? What's actually of interest is stuff that you can't see. And so at that point, it almost becomes telepathy, whatever that word actually means. It's accessing someone's mental contents and maybe them accessing yours in an exchange of information.
For instance, looking into a state actor, whoever it may be, and what their intentions are in an event, right? Or a criminal's next victim, for instance.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a little different story. For example, criminal's next victim, you don't need to get inside the criminal's head for that. You can remote view slightly into the future and describe the individual the criminal is going to attack.
Right.
Right. So that's a relatively straightforward remote viewing task. Now, intentions, those are obviously internally contained. And
right.
And it is possible through remote viewing, even if it's not technically remote viewing, to pick up on mental contents. I mean, we've done it before on a number of occasions. I teach my students how to do it in a very basic kind of a way. And oftentimes you don't know because you can't get feedback from inside somebody's mind unless they tell you, right? Or unless you see that intention unfold in real life. But here's the tricky thing with intentions is that people have all kinds of intentions, but they don't necessarily realize all of them. So, for example, you want to remote view the next terrorist attack. You want to get inside the minds of the terrorists that are going to stage the attack, and you want to pick up on their intentions. Well, at that point, they may actually have an intention to attack, say, a shopping mall and shoot a bunch of people or whatever, right? That may be their intention, but then it doesn't happen. And you say, oh, I must have been wrong. Well, no, maybe you did pick up their intentions, but something happened to change those intentions. And they either did something else or decided not to do that for whatever reason, right? So intentionality in general is a squishy thing to try and capture, even our own intentionality, right? Because we're always changing our minds and our intentions as well. But, it's worth trying if you, like, for example, what Saddam Hussein going to be up to, back during the Gulf War. It's worth trying because you may pick something up that then you can operationalize. But you have to be careful not laying too much weight on what you get. You have to try and get as much additional corroborating information as you can.
I've had a few remote viewers tell me that they can remote view alien craft in the inside of flying saucers. I'm sure you've heard the same thing. And
done it.
You've done it?
Yeah. Well, at least I think I did it. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Go ahead. Finish your question.
Okay.
Finish your question.
Well, now I want to go there. Thanks.
Yeah,
Paul.
I don't know. There's not much there, but go ahead.
Okay. But with the case of something like Oumuamua, where that's a perfect application for remote viewing, and you could jump on that quickly enough where a remote viewer wouldn't have any clue. There wouldn't be any front loading. There wouldn't be any fantasy involved there.
Okay.
But certainly we would like to know if Oumuamua was natural or if it's an ET technology,
right,
or where it came from.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that the perfect application?
Yes.
Yes. Has it
that
been
would be
done?
great. I mean, you might be able to confirm an extraterrestrial. Well, it's extraterrestrial no matter how you look at it. The question is whether it's naturally extraterrestrial or factually extraterrestrial, right? And yes, that would be a great application for remote viewing. Now, again, unless you can actually land on it, you may not be able to validate your perceptions, but it could add to the knowledge base on it, and in fact, it might even serve, as often happened with remote viewing in the military, could serve as a queuing mechanism. The remote viewer produces information that they can't confirm, but it suggests a way of examining whatever it is they're trying to examine that they hadn't thought of before, and then maybe that does confirm the remote viewing information ultimately. So, yeah, it could be useful in a case like that.
Now, one of the other things, and I meant to ask you about this, but now you're on the show. But
so you're not going to?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this weekend, which is, I think, one of the most fantastic applications for remote viewing would be asteroids and impacts and future events. Right? Is this something that maybe NASA would be interested in? Certainly, the planet would benefit from it. But future events, and the reason why I'm going there is if we go back to like Nibiru and we look at Sitchin's, research and things that discussed all of the, impacts and planets and the asteroid belt and how we got here and the moon, all of this, right? Wouldn't ET know about a possible future event that would be another mass extinction situation for this planet? Well, shouldn't we apply that same mindset to asteroids? And because NASA seems to only know about the bad stuff after the asteroid passes the planet.
Well, that's a little extreme. I mean, they at least know about some of the near Earth. What do they call them?
Near Earth object. Yes.
Yeah, near Earth objects, and they can give a probability of it hitting to whatever degree of their variables.
Did you know that last week we had a school bus sized asteroid, which is bad news?
Yes.
1,700 miles from Earth last
There's
week.
been a number of these near misses that NASA didn't know about.
Right.
I'm just saying they're not totally useless, right? They have cataloged a bunch of them that we probably need to worry about at some point, but we keep getting just missed by some that they didn't know about. And I don't blame them. Our detection means is still primitive, generally speaking. I mean, but 100 years ago, we didn't even know about those, right? Yeah, we didn't know if we'd been near missed or not when you get right down to it. So, but the question is can remote viewing be used to help with that? And I would say yes, cautiously. This is a little bit trickier a deal, partly because you're dealing with future prediction here, which, as I've noted, remote viewing is not perfect at by any stretch of imagination. Now, to get probably a little too technical, but whether an astronaut hits the astronauts hit the Earth all the time. Whether an asteroid hits the Earth or not, it is pretty much is probabilistic, but it's closes in on being deterministic, right? In other words, if an asteroid so that's what we get for going into overtime here. But
right.
Yeah. So if an asteroid is so its orbit is safe, its orbiter's trajectory is such that it is going to hit the Earth. That's a deterministic outcome. And those have the highest likelihood of remote viewers being able to capture it, right, in the future. The deterministic outcomes seem to be a little bit more easy to predict in the future. But the problem is you have to know what asteroid to focus the remote viewer on. Because you say, well, go out and find an asteroid that's going to hit the Earth. They could find one that's several million miles away and beyond our detection range, and that does us no good at all, right? Because, one asteroid looks like another pretty much, and we won't know until maybe 50 years it gets within range, and by then we still won't know if it's the one that remote viewed. So there's problems with it, but in principle, remote viewing might be helpful if it's done right.
Now, if somebody wants to learn how to remote view, I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. Yeah. What do they do?
Well, I'd say I teach a fully leaded live in-person class, and it's fairly expensive. But if you want to start off, I suggest you get my book, The Essential Guide to Remote Viewing. That is intended to introduce folks to remote viewing. It's kind of a survey course, and there are a couple of chapters in there that tell you how to do it yourself at just the basic level, okay? But I talk about where it came from. I talk about things that have been done with remote viewing. I talk about ways people apply it. I talk about even picking the right teacher for you if you decide you want to go and learn it. And it's even better for people who have friends, that people who are remote viewers have friends or family who are dubious, because this book is a no-nonsense. This is what remote viewing is. And I actually don't go into UFOs and aliens in this book, because I don't want it to freak people out, right? I want it to be an introduction. So,
well, I just got the book, and I can't wait to do the deep dive into it. Everybody that listens to this show has heard me say over the last 10 years or so that this is something that I want to learn to do. I haven't had the time. Now I've got the inspiration, and I've got the book, so I look forward to the deep dive. Paul, I can't wait for you to come back on the show, and we can continue this discussion next time. Today we did everything. Next time we'll focus on one subject, and we'll just go hard. This has just been amazing. Thank you so much, my friend.
Well, thank you. This has been fun.
I can't believe that both of us are standing on 2 feet right now after this weekend, and we're able to do a show tonight, because it was just nonstop, and it was just great. Thank you so much.
You betcha. It was, and I look forward to the next time.
Paul Smith. And again, the website is right there, jimmychurchradio.com, ourviewer.com. With that, I'm going to get out of here, and I want to remind everybody what is going on this week, because it is First-Time Guests Week. Tonight, Paul Smith. Tomorrow night, Steve Berg. Wednesday night, Sarah Breskman-Cosme is with us. And then, of course, Thursday night is the world premiere of The Observers. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What a great night on the show, and we're going to continue all of this throughout the week. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR. Syndication is the UnX Network. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2021 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, actor, comedian Steve Berg right here. Until then, I want everybody to be safe. It's time to fade to black.